I was born on October 1903, and we lived in a kind of a backwoods area where there was no modern facilities like we have now, of course. But when I got old enough that I could run around, it'd only take me about 5 minutes to get into deep woods, either north or south of where we lived. But anyway, I started to school when I was 5 years old. We had to walk 2 miles to school, and we didn't have anybody to come and get us, whether it rain or shine. We walked both ways. And so we, during our growing up, we had several ways of entertaining ourselves. My dad bought us a football. Now it's called a soccer ball over here now. But anyway, we had a big front yard, and we did build goal posts, and we had an awful lot of fun playing football. In the winter, the creek that runs through our place was not, well, it flooded in the winter time and was quite wide, so that there were lots of areas in which to skate. After almost every night after school, after supper, a bunch of the neighboring kids would all gather at this creek and skate. Everybody would bring lanterns and so forth, so that they'd have light around it. And we had an awful lot of fun that way. And but as we grew up, there was a lot of, we always had a lot of small game hunting, and of course we always had shotguns and 22 rifles, and rabbits and so forth was mostly our then my brother and I, after we did finish school, they put a dredge through the creek, which eliminated the winter skating, and after we finished school and got on our own, in order to make a little spending money, my brother Bentley and myself would cut wood for our neighbors, and in the spring of the year, in the creek, there was a lot of muskrats. We used to do a lot of muskrat trapping, and at that time muskrat fur was worth probably 75 cents a piece, so that you had to have a lot of muskrats in order to make very much money. But anyway, then after we, about when I was about 16 or 17, I'm getting ahead of my story a little bit. In 1914, I finished school, and my brother Jack asked me if I wanted to go to Chatham and work then now this was during the First World War, and that was in 1918, and so I went in and got a job. I was only 14 years old, and my job to start with was to handle shells. They were manufacturing 6-inch shells, and these shells in the rough form weighed approximately 150 pounds. I had a 14-year-old kid handling shells 150 pounds. I don't know whether they could do it now or not, but anyway, I did. And then the war, of course, ended in 1918 in November, and so I was out of work. I went back to the farm. About that time, football, or soccer as they call it now, was going out of fashion, and baseball was coming in. And so I got on, my brother Bentley and I got on the, we call him Ben, we got on the Kent Bridge team, and we were both, to start with, we were both outfielders, and they had a catcher by the name of Hank Arnold, but finally he left, and somewhere or other I got hooked into being the catcher. Anyway, unfortunately, I never did get a finger busted. That they didn't have gloves and equipment like they got now either. But anyway, we had a lot of good times during that baseball. Another thing, in 1902, I was 18 years old. I went out to the Canadian West on what is known as the Harvesters Excursion, and Ross Allison and myself went as a group, and we stayed there as a group all through the time. The same guy hired us all, and we were there for, we came back from there about the 1st of November, somewhere along in there. But come to think of it, the three of us starting into what they called stook or shock wheat in a field 1/4 of a mile in square. He had 4 quarters of wheat. Now that's 1 square mile, and we seemed like as though we were forever getting any place, but we finally got it done, and then we started thrashing. We would go out in the morning, and you could hardly see the ears of the horses against the sky, but we'd come back when you couldn't see the horses on the back. In other words, we were working about 14, 16 hours a day thrashing. That was all for $5 a day. But and when he came out, he had a brother, a son-in-law, who had a field of flax that he wanted, and his men had quit. And he come over and wanted to know if we would go over and help him out. So of course we did. We went out there to make money, so we stayed. And that was flax is a very funny thing to handle. A flax seed is like oil. I recall it. Yeah, they had the spout of the thrashing, the separator, into this portable bin, and we'd have to get in there and shovel it back so that to make room. I tried that with the flax, but it didn't work because I went right down to my neck in flaxseed. I finally scrambled out, but it was, if it had been much deeper, I'd have probably drowned in flaxseed. But another thing about flax is that if we wanted a little rest, all we had to do was turn the sheaf in sideways, and it would just plug that machine up, and we could get down off and smoke a cigarette or something while they were digging it out. But anyway, we came back from there. We had a real nice, it was a vacation, and we made pretty good money too at that time. And then, well, life was much the same from then on the farm. I stayed there until 1926. In 1925, what caused it, I don't think anybody knows yet, unless it was internal combustion or whatever you call it. And but our barns burned, the buildings. We did not have a barn, we just had a lot of buildings. But anyway, it burned. And after things got settled around, my dad bought an old barn, and he and I and my Uncle Dave tore that barn down and transported it back to our place. But we did that too late to get it up that winter. And that is the same winter that I came down to Detroit. I came down to visit my brother Jack, and while I was here, I went to visit a friend of mine, and he said, well, you don't have anything to do this winter at home, why don't you come down? And they are hiring because they have a temporary order, and which will be over with, be finished in the spring, and they would like wire drawers. If you want to come down, make yourself some money, and when they get through, well, you can go back. Oh, that is what I did. I've kind of got a little ahead of my story in a way, because I haven't brought any girls into it yet. And my first girl was named Jessie Wilson, and she and I got along pretty good together, but her dad didn't like me, so we got busted up that way. My next girl was Ruby DeCoo, and it was Ruby DeCoo's brother that was down here and got me to go down to the Hoskin Manufacturing Company. And it's altogether likely that if I hadn't met Jack's wife's sister, Helen, I might have married Ruby DeCoo. Who knows? But anyway, Helen Allen was also down visiting her sister, Jack's wife, and she got a job at the Hupmobile plant, and she stayed here. So that the four of us were there, and eventually Helen and I got married. Anyway, as far as Hoskins is concerned, I drew wire until spring, and they came along and told us, well, I guess you better start looking for another job, because this is can be finished. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to look for a job, I'm going back to farm. When they tell me I'm through, I'll go back to farm. But they just never came and told me. And so I worked there for 43 years on a temporary job. But anyway, I worked drawing wire for approximately 3 years. In 1929, I got kind of bored with drawing wire. The machines that they had at that time, you start out a coil of wire, and it'd run for a couple of hours, and you just sit there and watch it. Of course, you had 4, 5, 6 machines, blocks to run, and but it didn't take very long to get them going, and then you just sit there, and it got very monotonous. So I asked for a job on the inspection department, and it wasn't too long until they did come and told me that I could go on the inspection. So I did. I was on the inspection department then from 29 until 1940. I inspected probably all sizes of wire, from wire that you have to hold up against the light to see, to inspecting 1/4-inch wad or larger. The wire is drawn through steel dies down to 23 gauge, from 23 gauge on down to as fine as you want it, is drawn through diamonds. I think about the smallest that I know about is about 1/10 of a thousandth of an inch in diameter. Now, an ordinary common hair is around 3/1000 in diameter. So that's about a 1/10 of a thousandth. But anyway, then they got me into the laboratory because the man that was inspecting the thermocouple wire was retiring. He was old enough to had to retire, and so they got me in there, and that, for some reason or other, really appealed to me. And it is also a queer thing that nobody else seemed to like it. It's very unpredictable stuff. But anyway, I seemed to get along pretty good with it, and I think I don't know just how to say it without, let's say, bragging about it, but anyway, I used to go and tell the boss some things that, how the heck why don't you do this or why don't you do that? And he wanted to know what I mean. I'd tell him, and finally, after we went through with what I had suggested, which was to find out the effect of all of the different metals on the curve fit of thermocouple wire, why he come and handed it to me, and he said, "Here, Don, it's your job." So that was my job from then on, to control thermocouple wire all the way from raw material until it was shipped out of the door. And now, to go back to the thermocouple wire controlling, when I first went in, they did not call it thermocouple wire. They called it matched alloys, which meant that they would check it, and if the positive side and the negative side of the thermocouple had the same EMF, which is electromotive force, then those two coils would be tied together and sold as a pair. After I had been in there for a while, I got to thinking that was a heck of a way to handle things. And I went to the boss and told him that why in the heck don't we find out how to make this stuff all the same EMF? Well, he wanted to know what I meant, and I told him I said, well, make a heat, throw a shovel full of stuff into it and see what happens. That gave him an idea, so that he was a little more scientific than I would be, and he got down to where he would make a heat, pour an ingot, add 1/2% of something, and then pour that, and then we'd have the first ingot, which is regular, and the second two ingots, which would be the addition, and compare the two for EMF, which would give us the effect of that particular alloy, metal, whatever we had added to it. So that's what we did, and we went through all of the metals that are added into the thermocouples. And perhaps I should say that a thermocouple is two dissimilar metals in the form of wire welded at one end, and a meter hooked onto the other end, and when the weld is heated, it will generate a certain amount of electricity. This is measured, the hot junction, or the weld that is heated, is called the hot junction. The other end of the thermocouple is called the reference junction. Now that is supposed to be kept at 32 degrees, which gives you the difference between freezing temperature and melting ice temperature, and whatever the temperature of the furnace, of the whatever you're measuring. it's also true that you can use the same metals, the same alloys, taking the what's called lead wire, fasten that on and take that right back to the meter, providing it's all at the same temperature. If one side is hotter than the other, well, then you throw it up. But that is why if you are measuring something for checking, you use a temperature of a reference junction of 32 degrees. That then there's no error due to difference in temperature between either side of the thermocouple. And so that was all caused by the war, the Second World War. Cobalt became a strategic metal, and cobalt at that time was just an impurity in the asbot nickel. Then the International Nickel Company electrolytically separated the cobalt from the nickel. Taking the cobalt out of the thermocouple material through the EMF, or electromotive force, threw it all out of kilter. So that is where we had to find out how to put it back in so that the thing would be usable. I was told that it couldn't be done, but I told the boss I thought that it could be done, and he said, "Go ahead and do it." So I did have a few extra heats made, and using what I knew about the effect of the different metals, I got it back to where it was usable again. I think that is about about all that there is about thermocouples. That there's an awful lot of ways of using thermocouples. There are a lot of precautions that have to be followed carefully in order to have a reasonably good measurement. To go back a little bit, I went to the boss and told him, why the heck don't we put this thermocouple material back on the curve? He says, we don't know how. Well, I said, why don't we find out how? He says, what do you mean? I said, well, make a heat and throw a shovel full of stuff into it. Then that is when he put his knowledge of metallurgy to work, and made it so that it was a little bit easier to know what each metal would do. The way I done it, the way I told him, it would just, we know that it would do something, but we didn't know what. He made it so that we knew what it would do. So I think, is there, I don't think, is there anything more that you, we'll have to go back then on the domestic side of my life. As I say, I came down and I stayed with my brother Jack, his wife May, and May's sister Helen was living with them at the time. As I said, she was working at the Hopmobile, and I went down there, and I got this job. So I lived with Jack and May also, so that it helped them out with their the board that Helen and I paid. Then, well, Helen and I was thrown together so much, and that we just naturally got going around together, and eventually we decided that we might as well get married, so we did. And one thing at that time, we did the most of our courting, let's say, by we'd walk down to Grand River. Jack and May lived near Joy Road and Grand River at that time. We could get onto the streetcar at Joy Road and Grand River, and we could ride all the way out to Belle Isle. That was 6 cents apiece. And that would take at least an hour to get out to Belle Isle, and we get off and maybe walk across to Belle Isle and come back. That just give us a chance to be alone together. And then, of course, come back in another hour to get back home again. So for 24 cents, we had all afternoon to be together. Shows at that time to go to a theater was around some of 25 cents or something like that. We could go downtown and go see a Wild West show for a dime. There was a lot of shows around it, even the big shows like the Fox and so forth downtown. That was only around 75 cents. After I got to working, I had a few dollars to spend that way. And then my son came along in 1928, and the 4th of April, 1928. About that time, Jack had decided that he would like to have a place of his own. And between us all, we finally got the place out on Berry and Dearborn, and everything was fine until the Depression came along. And I was only working 3 6-hour days a week, and Jack did not have he was bumped down. He did not have a steady run on the DSR, so that eventually I moved down on a place on Middle Point and in Dearborn, and then he could rent the upstairs where I was, and with that way he finally managed to hang on to the building through FHA mortgage and stuff, and I don't know. But anyway, then I finally bought a place down on Whitlock in Dearborn, and while I was down there, Helen had to have appendectomy, and then again in 1943 she contracted tuberculosis, and she was in the sanitarium for about 4 months, and the doctor finally said that she was getting better, but he didn't want her walking up and down stairs. So we had to, the place we had on Whitlock was a 6-room colonial, 2-story colonial, and bedrooms all upstairs. So finally I found a place out in West Dearborn, and I sold the place on Whitlock and bought that one. And that was a pretty good deal as far as that is concerned. I don't know, there's a great deal more to this, that about that time, we went out there in 1944, and Helen was then able to, with what help I could give her, she could keep the house going, and eventually she got, let's say, well again. Anyway, we got through the Second World War started, and then our wages, our money got a little more plentiful, and so we started taking a few trips. Our first trip was up, I had a 1948 Nash ambassador. Our first trip was up around northern Michigan, and then in 1951, we took a trip to Florida, and from then on we made trips pretty much all over the country. Now, then my son Bill wanted to get his time in the Army over with, and so he wanted to enlist and get it over with, and then go back to school after he got out of the Army. Actually, he went into the Air Force, but fortunately, I guess, he met his wife while he was in there, and they got married before he got out of the Army. And he did not, when he did get out, he didn't want me to, didn't want Dad to keep his family, so he wouldn't let me put him through school. He went to Detroit Tech, I think it was, and learned to become a electronic technician. His first son was born in 1949, and his second son was born in 1953, and he worked at Burroughs for a good many years, and but Burr is such a big place that he more or less was just a number. I think that for some reason he was let out, and he got himself a job out in Ann Arbor, and I don't know. I think you know just about as much now from here on, maybe more than I do. So if you want to, some of the things that happened to Bill, my son, during his growing up. One time down at his Uncle Jack's, he was running and tripped for some reason over something, and he fell and he hit his eyebrow on the edge of the buffet, and it cut it quite there. I think you can still see that scar on there. Another time down in on Whitlock, I had burned the grass on the lot alongside of my place, and everything had burned except I think it was goldenrod stalks. And your dad was over in there and reached down to pick up something, and he jabbed one of these stalks into his eye. And we took him to an eye doctor, and he said he didn't think there was anything permanently wrong with the eye, that it would be all right. Well, eventually it is proven that he is all right, yeah. And that was another time that we were down at one of the family reunions at Mitchell's Bay. And in playing ball there, something they got the ball up in the eaves of the house. And of course Bill is the one that goes up the ladder to get the ball. And for some reason or other he slipped and fell off the ladder down. Well, knocked the wind out of himself, but I guess he didn't hurt himself a great deal. Then when he was real small, he and his cousin John, Jack's son, were playing, and he had a bottle. I think he was young enough that he was still using a bottle with a nipple on it. But anyway, he fell there, and he hit his tooth on this bottle and drove the tooth right up into his jaw. And we thought that he had knocked the tooth out. But we couldn't find the tooth, so we thought, well, it knocked it down his throat and he swallowed it. But it wasn't long until that tooth started to come down again. But it never did become solid. And eventually the dentist picked it out. It was just laying there. When his second tooth came in, it evidently was harmed by this injury, and it has given him trouble all his life. That's all. I guess he still got a got an artificial tooth in there now. That I don't. About the only time that I was ever really angry with Bill was he and I forget the guy's name that he one of his boyfriends. Very innocently on their part, they went to school for some little doings that was going on the night, but he did not tell his mother and I. And this was wrong about, I guess, after 9 o'clock. We were just about ready to call the police, thinking that he was lost or gone away or something had happened to him. And he come wandering along as innocently as could be, that he and his, well, I kind of lost my temper and I shook him up a little bit after that, but that's about the only time I was ever really angry with Bill. And after that, whenever he went any place, he would tell us there he was going. But he was, Bill was a very, very easy boy to control. He is, if I told him not to do something or to do something, that was it. I guess it was quite a bit like I was with my dad. When my dad told me to do something, he was the boss. I never questioned it. And I think Bill was the same way. He told me one time that he was really afraid of me. Well, I don't think he meant, afraid physically, but he was afraid he was afraid to disobey me. Maybe that's good, maybe it didn't. I don't think it's the way kids react now. But I don't think that there was anything a great deal. There was he was I think he was a very good paper boy. And there was one thing that amused me, but yet I think it taught Bill he had worked hard with this paper route that he had. And the spring of the year, there came a what the heck do you call it? A caravan? Not didn't a caravan, but one of these fun places that just down the street from us. And Bill came to me and wanted to know if he could spend some money going down there. I said, well, that's your money. You can spend it if you want to, if that's what you want to do with it. Well, he not only spent for himself, but nobody else, none of his friends had any, so he spent the whole works on his friends. So he come back after all the work that he had done, he come back and broke. So that's then I think that he would have liked to have played football when he went to high school over here. But I advised him not to because of the possibility of him getting permanently hurt. And I think he played a little bit, but he's not very seriously about it. And I don't know, it's back to when I was a boy growing up on the farm. I would say that the first thing I can recall of my job first was to gather kindling so as my mother could start a fire in the morning. Most of the wood at that time was chopped into lengths to fit the stove, so that there was a lot of chips. So I would have to go and take a little basket and pick chips up, dry chips, so that I could start a fire in the morning with these chips. And after that, as soon as I got big enough that I could work a pump handle, I had to pump water enough to water the horses and the cattle, pigs and what have you. Until I got big enough that I could handle a team of horses, that was my job, pumping water. After I got big enough that I could take a man's place in the field, well then of course my dad would go and buy a gasoline motor and a pump jack, and so that I didn't have to pump water anymore. But then of course there was at that time everything was handwork and team horses. That corn, beets, beans, what have you, all had to be hoed. And that was part of I've always said it kind of broke my heart on a pump handle and a hoe handle and on a pitchfork handle. But I will say there's one thing that when I was home, my dad looked after the cattle. My brother Ben looked after the horses, and my job was to look after the pigs. And I've always believed that a pig is one of the most intelligent animals and one of the strongest animals in existence. The pigs got to know my voice. When they were out and it come time to feed them, I would just holler and the pigs would come running. My dad and my brother, if I didn't happen to be there and they wanted to feed the pigs, they could holler their heads off and the pigs would never come. But I don't think, I have seen on television, I have seen pigs with an ear of corn fastened ahead of them, pulling a plow, where it'd take a team of horses to pull a plow. Here's the one pig pulling the plow. I think pound for pound, a pig is just about the strongest animal that in existence. But anyway, there was always work on the farm. Haying was all hand work. Even at times I have cut hay with a scythe, and I have cut corn with a a corn knife that looked like a sickle, and you carry it over and put it in the shock. Now, of course, that's all machinery work, but at that time, things were done by hand. And even when I was very small, corn was planted with a hand planter, and it was marked out with a marker, and the corn was planted with this corn planter, and I've seen my dad planting corn. You know, you jab this into the ground, boom, boom, and then step on that to cover it up. But all hay you'd put it into haycocks, and when it was thoroughly dry, then there was a team of horses and a wagon who'd go out and pitch it onto the wagon and drag it up and put it in the mouth. That was my job, was to pitch it on. My brother Ben, he was on the wagon, he would load it. The same thing with harvesting grain. My dad, of course, would run the binder, which cut the wheat, put it into sheaves. Then we would come along, my brother and I, and my granddad until he died, and we would put it into what they call shocks, and there was always in the fall of the year, after everything was harvested, there would be thrashing machines would come around, and we'd thrash the grain and blow the straw into stacks, and that would be used for in the winter for bedding for the horses and cattle, pigs, and eventually it would be rotted down into be manure for put back onto the land for fertilizer. And the power when I was very small, the power was a steam engine. That was really fun. To see the steam engine, and they would generally buy wood. Some would use coal, but in general it was wood to create the heat for the steam, make the steam. And then after a while, when the tractors came in, then they would use the gasoline tractor to run the separator, and that was my one of my jobs was to keep the water that the engine would use to make steam with, and they would use a lot of water. That was always, you'd see them coming down the road. There'd be the steam engine, and then the water tank, and then the separator behind that. And that would hold, probably that would hold maybe 500 gallons of water. And that was just about every day. we'd have to go down to the creek and dip that water out and fill that tank with it, the corn was about the same way. We'd have to cut that, put it into shocks. Then in the fall of the year, maybe even after it froze, they'd take the shocks down, lay them down, and with the husking peg, they'd have to husk the corn and throw it into piles, and then they'd have to load that and take it up, and maybe some of it used for feed, some would be sold, and I don't know. I would say that my life on the farm was a very healthy existence. I don't know just how to describe but following a team of horses, you probably would walk maybe 10 miles a day following a team of horses. And we'd have to use harrows, and they go over clods, and I don't know, I lay that to the fact that I have had pretty good ankles. I've never had a sprained ankle, just because I think for the reason that walking over these, my ankles just got strengthened. And well, one thing is that we always use big, heavy cowhide shoes, and I mean shoes that laced up over the ankle bone, and there was no such thing as an Oxford like you have now. So I don't know whether there's anything more that we can. Yeah, I'll take this right now. One thing I forgot to mention was the recreation when I was growing up. There was no such thing as television or even radio at that time until quite late in my stay on the farm. But there was always ways of entertaining yourselves in the evening. There was always storytelling. There was folk songs. My grandmother and grandfather were, my mother and dad are all pretty good singers, and the neighbors would get around and just naturally get together and have fun that way. And also, especially in the winter time, there was always card games. Euchre was the big game, of course, and it was really fun when I was a kid to see those old farmers with their heavy fists. They would really get right down in earnest and whang the table till they make it jump. And well, there was a lot of a little finagling around too. They all seemed to have signs that they would employ at times, so it kind of cheat a little bit, so that everybody know what to do or what. But anyway, it was all in good fun. And then after I got a few nickels ahead, I discovered that there was such a game as poker. My grandfather had told me about poker, and he and the rest of us used to play poker once in a while for matches, just to see. And but then after I got a few nickels, and I discovered there was a poker game out at Kent Bridge, and Kent Bridge is the little village near where I lived. But anyway, I got into the poker game, and the very first night I played, I made $30. But I never was that lucky afterward. But I never lost a heck of a lot. And so then there was always dances, country dances. And they were all within horse and buggy range, and especially there was a hall at Kent Bridge, and they used to put in dances there, and it was real good, good clean fun. That's another thing I didn't mention, is that Kent Bridge, when I was a teenager, it started to disintegrate before I left there. But at one time, Kent Bridge was a very thriving little community. There was a grocery store. Well, let's call it a grocery store, but there was he also carried dry goods and work shoes, almost anything. But there was also a hardware store, a butcher shop, there was a hotel, a harness shop, there was a bank, a barber shop, a tailor shop. There was almost anything that you wanted there. But then, when automobiles started to become plentiful, people, instead of going to Kent Bridge, they would go into Chatham. And it wasn't long until Kent Bridge just started to, let's say, fall apart. There was also, I forgot to mention, there was two blacksmith shops. I used to get a big bang when I was a kid watching one, the blacksmith, Barney Gregory. He was real good with horses, shoeing horses. He could mend almost anything that was made out of steel, iron, and if you wanted, you'd take a plowshare. Sometimes the point would get worn down to where it was no longer usable. It'd take it out to him, and he'd put a new point on it. And but then that all got disbanded by the use of automobiles. I made one winter, I made some money out the mills. A neighbor of mine and I went out, and in the beet season, if there wasn't enough cars to take care of the beets as they came in, the sugar beets as they came in, well, they would just dump them on the ground. Then we would go out and after the season and there was cars available, we'd go out and take them out of the piles and put them into the cars. At the mills, and I was out there, and the old wagon that we had, the ground was frozen, and over a bump, and I'll be darned if it didn't break an axle. So we took the broken axle off of the wagon, and we went out to a place called Don Mills. He was not only a blacksmith, but a millwright, or I think that's what you would call it. Anyway, he built us a new axle for that wagon. And it was quite an experience to see that guy take a big hunk of wood. It was about 6 feet long and about 8 inches square, and he sawed it and milled it and turned it, and I don't know what all it, but when he got through with it, he put it under the wagon, and that was it. It was all good. But there was a lot of things like that the automobiles made those, and the progress, let's say, made so many of those things unnecessary anymore. They now, where we used to have a binder and which would cut the grain and tie it into sheaves, and then we would stook them or shock them and then drag them in to the thrashing machine, thrash them. Now the combines go ahead and cut it and thrash it and put it in the wagons, and that's all there is to it. And that I often think about the old way of doing things when I was brought up, and I think it's the most healthy. Now a farmer sits on his machine and there's practically no exercise to it. And there probably is some types of farming where it has to be handwork, such as dairy farming or even hog farming and so forth like that, hog raising, but that's pretty much all of what I can remember of. What do you want me to tell you about the trips that we took out with your Uncle Otto and Aunt Jane and your grandmother and Helen and I? Well, we were up to this place, and we were out fishing, and your Uncle Otto, he liked his beer, and he took along 6 bottles of beer, and this was all before breakfast. We just got up and went, and I didn't want any beer, and the other guys didn't want any beer, so your Uncle Otto, he drank all 6 bottles. We caught a lot of fish, a lot of perch, and we brought them back, and of course eventually we had them for breakfast. But your Uncle Otto and I was in the motel room, and all at once then he had to break wind. But when he did, it wasn't wind. And you never saw anything so funny in all your life. Roy, I get my bag. We laughed all day about that. I gotta tell you. Yeah, Uncle Otto was a very funny person. He was very embarrassed about, if he went and bought himself a new suit, he'd put it on and he wouldn't go any place. He'd go out to the barnyard and walk around in the barnyard for a few minutes, and then it was an old suit, so then he would go somewhere. He wouldn't wear it, and I don't know, but I've often thought about me. I'm not on television.
Go ahead.
No. He was in there, you know. Roy, I shit my pants. Well, I couldn't help him a bit. He just, well, that 6 bottles of beer had just gone through him just like water, you know, for breakfast. Boy, those were good fish, though. So we brought and we cleaned them, and your grandmother and Aunt Jane fried them, and oh, there was so many incidences, you know. I don't know whether you remember or not. I'm sure you've been that way, but in going down to Dover Center, we used to, instead of going into Chatham and out that way, we'd cut back through Prairie Siding. And there was one place there at that time, there was a culvert, and all they had done is just put the conduit, laid it down, and piled dirt over it, and made it like this, you know. Well, you drive along, you know, like that. Every time that I went down there, I would take, there would be your Grandma Helen and Bill, and Aunt May, and John and Barbara. I think that's probably before Joan's time, or she might have been a baby. She don't remember it, I don't think. But those kids would make me turn around and drive back over that. I'd have to go back over that 2 or 3 times just to see it up like that. Yeah, I don't know if Dad would still remember that or not, but he probably would. But they would just like that thrill of going up and over that. Yeah. Yeah. And we used to go from here in the evening after work. We'd drive down to your Uncle Otto's and play cards probably till midnight or 1 o'clock or something like that, and then drive back home again. And yeah. I was always, I don't know, I don't suppose you remember, you might remember Bill Hervel. Mm-hmm. And Frank Stevenson. He was a friend of the Hervels. He and his wife and Bill and Flo Hervel were friends, you know, back and forth together. Frank Stevenson and Bill Hervel and your Uncle Jack and I would get in and drive down to your Uncle Otta's, and maybe your Uncle Hill would come down. There'd be 6 of us, or play cards or something like that. Oh, there's an awful lot of, you know, things, when you get to thinking about these things time after time, one thing brings on another, and I haven't thought about your dad jabbing that thing in his eye for a long time, and this brought it back. You look at his eye, and I'm pretty sure it's his left eye. But there's a little black mark, something in the I think it's partly in the iris and partly in the white. It didn't hit the pupil, but it was just, I never did that again. I never, the hell with the weeds after that. When I used to go over there, I had a garden in the side of the, alongside of them. In fact, when I went there, all it was the house. And they did have some sort of front lawn, not much, but the people that owned it lived up in Bad Axe. And all like that, they rented the house, and I guess whoever had it would just send them some money, and they lived in the house, to heck with anything else. When I went there, I did the same thing until I bought it. And then I bought the place, and then when they had built, they dug the old red clay out of the bottom and just thrown it in the backyard and built the house and left the damn stuff there. I got here with a great big hill of just clay in the back. I had to, in fact, I borrowed a wheelbarrow. I forget who the heck I got it from now. But anyway, I dug that clay all out and took it over and dumped it in the lot alongside of me. I dug enough black dirt out of the lot alongside of it to come back, and I had a real good layer of dirt. When I dug the post holes for the fence that I put up, I dug down through so much of that red clay, and then down here there was a layer of good black dirt that they had covered up. Now, of course, they go in with the bulldozer and shove that topsoil off and then put it back on. They didn't do it at that time. But I got it from next door, and I had a real good lawn. And I built the fence all around. I put it up myself. I went and bought used pipe and dug the post holes and cemented them in and put up the fence. I had a gate next to the house and a gate out to the alley. And I left the place there for a garage and then I got the idea that if I could buy it, I'd buy the lot alongside of me. In fact, I went to find out about the lot alongside of me. But just at that time is when your grandmother got tuberculosis. And so that was, that finished that. Now, if I had been real smart, which I wasn't at that time, I didn't know anything about real estate at that time. Now, I would have just had somebody come in and build a bedroom on the back of that place. And I'd had a 7-room house, I'd probably still been living there. It was a real, I liked that place. I think I liked it even better than the one out on Rosevere. I liked the idea of bedrooms being upstairs, and but I could put a bedroom and a bath downstairs there, and God, it would have been worth something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed this, but I got to go to the bathroom again for some reason or other.